What's up, everyone? Welcome to another cool discussion video. My name is Saki, and today's discussion is the new Capcom Cup rules. So with Capcom's release on their new rules change, pretty much if you're not familiar, I'll read it out loud to you. So from the base on Twitter, they just promoted a screenshot where it says, in anticipation of the 2023 Capcom has made the decision to update the Capcom Pro Tour rules in relation to leverless controllers. Now, if you don't know what leverless controllers are, they're pretty much any type of controller that is strictly without any levers or sticks. So a lot of the times we really call this either all button or leverless controllers. This also does count for like mix boxes that are using keys or keyboards as well. This was done to address consistency and fairness concerns, as Capcom proceeds to say, and this rule change can be viewed on the CapcomProTour.com, which we're going to go ahead and take a look specifically. So let's go ahead and check it out. So just gonna go diving straight into what the biggest change is. So Capcom writes that the fighting game genre has been seeing numerous groundbreaking changes over its long history, most recently with the advent and increased adoption of leverless controllers. Capcom constantly studies and reviews new developments in controller technology, evaluating their advantages and disadvantages, while also taking into consideration the differences between controller input and character behavior, which leads us to be making an informed and justified adjustments to our controller usage rules. Basically, what they're saying is, we know that hitboxes exist, we know that leverless controllers exist, we know that there's different controllers out there, but do they provide that competitive advantage or not? And is our game capable of reading those competitive advantages? The new rule we are putting forth below is designed to ensure all leverless controllers operate to a universal standard, regardless of what make or model is at Capcom sanctioned events. So with this in mind, we've decided to make the following change. If the up and down directions are input at the same time, both inputs must be maintained or both inputs must be rejected. To clarify, if up and down inputs are made simultaneously, the character must not be able to perform a jump or crouch action. And if the left or right inputs are made simultaneously, the character must not perform a forward or backward movement. So what does that mean? If my character, when I press down and up, if I press these two buttons on the same time, I should not be able to do any type of input. Meaning I can't jump, I can't even do read it as an actual button. So if I do like an up down square, for example, I shouldn't be able to do that if I press that button at the same time. I have to dial it, pretty much is how that kind of reads. And if I go with my left or with my right and I tap on both, if I do this, I have to be able to not move. I'm not going to be able to move forward. I'm not going to be able to move back. I should not be able to do a back forward input by pressing these two buttons and then whatever is like a super, for example, or a special move. Why is that super important? Well, because the fact is that many people claim that on the actual hitbox, not on a micro, on actual hitbox made controllers, you are capable of doing that. And in fact, there's even videos of hitbox showing off and even stating that you are able to do that. Whereas with many of the other leverless controllers, sure, you have an easier time with the inputs, but for example, myself, when I was playing Mortal Kombat 11, dial-up, I was actually at a disadvantage because of the dial-up inputs not being read in accordance. So I'd have to be more precise on my timing. Guilty Gear Strive, you see it all the time. I actually sometimes do a back forward and my moves sometimes don't come out because it's reading as if I entered those two buttons at the same time and it's not gonna let me continue. So what does this really mean? And is this kind of fair? This is where we kind of get into the whole FGC discussion on whether or not hitbox should be allowed in competition. And I remind you, I am saying hitbox specifically because they're the only ones right now that are stating that they don't want to change. So if we take a look at Junk Food Micros Arcades, which shout out to them, I love them very, very much. Yes, I am sponsored by them, so of course I'm going to talk a bit about them. And as you can see, I use a lot of their products. But they've already come out and explained why they're capable of being able to update to this standard. Not only that, but you'll have the ability to take away that standard so that when you play other games, you're not going to have that issue. And what that is that with the coding in the bookboards that they use for specifically in micros and in their products, you'll be able to have indicators as well as full on adaptability, as well as able to adjust what you need to adjust so that you are in line with Capcom's rules, whether it be online or whether it be offline. Why is this so good? Because this means that there's already, this has already been thought of by the people at Junk Foods, as well as other companies that are also saying, yeah, we can technically do this. It's not like the end of the world. Your goal as a competitor, if you're buying any type of stick, is so that you can remain universal. Meaning that if whatever happens to the console, to the game, your stick can still be used onto those. That's what you should be kind of like thinking about when you're trying to purchase a stick for yourself. Hitbox is saying that this is the standard and not really adapting to what Capcom is saying, who is technically God in this situation if you think about it. That is not a fun time, because now you just spent $300 on a controller you're probably not going to be able to use on a competitive level. This is also not counting the fact that this is just Capcom saying that this change has been implemented. We don't know if Street Fighter 6 is actually going to be able to do what Strive has done, which is, again, sometimes those misinputs is me literally pressing on the button twice or at the same time and the input's not coming out. So that also will add to like frustration to the player, because what if you connect to a hitbox and they cannot be able, it cannot be used. It won't be able to be used in game. As well as also too, the other big thing that people aren't talking about is that it's not just these types of controllers. On the PlayStation controllers, they actually suffer from the same thing that these like brook boards and these boards are suffering too. Your stick, you can literally press on these two buttons, and this button, like this entire D-pad, will be able to read as two inputs being read. So sometimes when you were playing on Street Fighter 5, for example, you'd still get those perfect sonic boom combos. You'd still get the up motion even though you were holding down and up. What does that mean for controllers if Capcom is pretty much telling Sony, the way that you've designed your D-pad, it's not going to work for us? And that is where there's another issue too, as far as this Capcom's ruling. Then we can talk about, well, how do you regulate that, especially when all of your tournaments are online? So there's a lot. Let me know what you think in the comments about this ruling. But personally, for me, if Capcom says, hey, this is what we read it as, Capcom has every right to do that. That's their competitive tournament. That's their tour. That's their game, right? And at the end of the day, controllers should be the ones to be able to adapt to it. And if you're working with a controller, or if you're working with a company, or if you're even purchasing from a company and they're not actually giving you a adaptability, already you're at a disadvantage from the get-go. Okay, it's happening right now with newer consoles too, where right now a lot of TOs are moving to next gen consoles, but they don't have the PS5 boards. They don't have the ability to actually move to those newer gen consoles. So you're left with a stick that's still only playing PS4 games, and there's no way to actually update them. Thankfully, Junk Food has been covered. Junk Food Custom Arcades has you guys covered. But yeah, if you're purchasing and you're spending that much of money for a competitive controller, make sure that your controller can actually be able to adapt to whatever the game devs are saying, and that the company is willing to work with you on that.